Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello and welcome to Man Alive. I am here today with Jason Diggs, who just wrote a book. Jason, congratulations.
Thank you.
And the book is called Conflict Equals Energy, which when you showed me the book title, I was like, whoa, that is thrilling.
Yeah, it was really interesting. The title came to me and the first line of the first chapter, which I'll leave a little bit of a mystery for people.
Okay.
It came to me when I was on an airplane. And so really what the book is a distillation and a full authentic relating curriculum, right? So there's...
and for those who don't know what authentic relating is, well, we'll get into that, but just keep going with what you were saying.
Yeah, it's really a book that's very practical and designed to help us have conscious communications in all of our relationships, right?
I love it.
And what I realized is that transforming conflict into clarity, like, we use these word boundaries. I think clarity is a better word. It's like, oh, I know what I want. I know what I need, and I can communicate that well to other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh
So
God,
conflict can be transformed into that. It can be transformed into connection. It can be transformed into creativity or collaboration with other people, but it actually takes a lot of skill. So conflict equals energy is kind of like the advanced practices of authentic relating. Awesome. And so, that's what the end of the book is about.
Great. Okay. So today we're going to talk about conflict. We're going to talk about how to navigate conflict. We're going to talk about the education that most people don't get around having emotions and being with their partner's emotions. And before we dive in, let me give you an introduction for people who don't know you.
Oh, I just launched in.
No, this is great. I love it.
Yeah?
This is perfect. So Jason Diggs is a modern Renaissance man, equal parts artist, philosopher, teacher, and video producer. From 2003 to 2012, he worked for Ken Wilber and other clients to create thousands of hours of educational media on the topics of transpersonal psychology, spirituality, productivity, and personal growth. And for the past 4 years, he's been a trainer and facilitator for groups with the authentic, relating, and circling realm, and is obsessed with how humans can live and relate optimally. And you and I go back, many, many years, having worked in the authentic relating realm and taught in the authentic relating realm together, and also have a shared spiritual practice and, the integral work in transpersonal psychology. And so part of what I love about you is your range, that you can go from the woo and the spiritual to super grounded and, like you said, optimal relating that actually, practical tools, which this book really gives. So thank you for spanning the range of humanity. And tell us a little bit about conflict equals energy.
Yeah, this is really about reforming our relationship to conflict. Like just very naturally in our nervous systems, we contract when other people around us are tense and contracted.
I don't, but no, I'm just kidding.
I haven't met a human yet that enjoys the feeling of someone else being mad at them or someone else
Right, the
being upset
resentment, the
with them, right?
frustration, the disappointment, all those things. It's so hard to feel that from someone else.
Yeah, it's a natural part of life that happens to all of us.
Yeah.
And what do we do in those moments? Our instinctual animal um, kind of just wants to run away or wants to preempt the conflict or wants to solve it immediately.
I
There's
want to
all
blow
these,
shit up.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so this book is really about helping us slow down and be more skillful with our own internal emotions and really translating them into what I call making clear and vulnerable requests. Right? If we
Ooh,
can, if
yeah,
we can actually take the raw material of our emotions and um, get the messages from those, we can
mhm,
then communicate that with the people in our lives and get more of our needs met,
yeah,
right? So it's almost like a three-stage process for having a really functional emotional life and
yeah.
really healthy conscious relationships.
I love that. Can you say a little more about clear and vulnerable requests? And with this audience being mainly men,
Hmm.
sometimes when men hear the word vulnerable, it's like, oh, that could make me look weak or unmanly. And I
Hmm.
don't believe that. And my TED talk is all about that and everything. But
Yeah.
for those who are listening, how do you think about that for yourself as a man?
Yeah. I'm really passionate about this topic and um, redefining the word vulnerable in a way that it doesn't mean you have tears in your eyes. Vulnerable doesn't mean that, right?
Doesn't
It
have to.
actually simply means taking a risk,
Mm,
which in a sense is the essence of the masculine,
huh,
the way that I think of it. And so I really appreciated you acknowledging me for being practical
mhm,
because, yeah, I have gone really deep into my spiritual practice, which is the diamond approach, and
mhm.
that's transpersonal psychology work. But I'm always thinking about how do we make this really tangible
Yeah,
and really applicable very quickly. And so the book is really a distillation of the last 15 years of my journey. And I give and I translate everything into tools. So the book has 30 different tools we can apply to our lives right
great.
away.
Yeah,
And making clear and vulnerable requests is what I call a master tool. It's like one of the top five. And vulnerable simply means that we're open to the unknown.
mhm,
We're open to um, receiving a no from someone else,
yeah,
right? As soon as you are um, making a request from someone
yeah.
and you're no longer trying to control the situation,
Ah,
you're actually in relationship with the other person.
right. And they're like that's so risky in a way because for many of us, hearing no or somebody even not liking what we like or what we want,
Hmm.
pings that part of us. It's like, oh God, I'm not good enough, or I'm not right, or there's something wrong with me. And
Yeah.
and I love what you said about the risk, like the risk to actually go there and feel that part of your humanity rather than trying to just protect yourself from ever feeling that and shoring up and defending.
Mm. Yeah, I'm thinking about the name of your podcast, Man Alive, right?
Hmm.
So when I make a request of my business partner or my girlfriend or whoever, I feel more aliveness in my body.
Yeah. Right, which could
Right?
come in the form of like nervousness, those tingles or energy, or feeling like you got punched in the gut, or it's not
Yeah.
always a pleasurable feeling, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to try to control people. It's a lot less skillful to try to like manage the situation in a
Yeah,
strategic way and it like insinuate or like be subtle about my needs, right?
yeah. What
But
do
it
you?
but
Yeah, keep going.
yeah, but if I'm making a clear request and a vulnerable request, it's kind of like living on the edge
Yes,
relationally.
I think about that as like sometimes when I talk to men about doing these things. Well, I always laugh because I'm like, wow, men will jump out of helicopters and land on a snowy mountain or go whitewater kayaking, and yet like making a
Mhm.
request is, feels like death. So I sometimes think about it like standing on a mountaintop, with the breeze blowing through your hair, and instead of like tensing and clenching and wishing it was some other way, it's like this embrace of that risk or the elements, and living on the edge is such a great way to say it. And right, with that reframe of living on the edge, it's not unmanly. It's, I mean, never was unmanly, but there's just nothing weak about it. It's actually, it takes incredible strength.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes emotional strength. And, emotional strength is something that we can think of as that can develop for our whole lives.
Yeah.
Right? As men, when we're 90 years old, we can still be developing emotional strength. And we'll probably have a lot more emotional influence over the people in our lives than physical influence if that starts to decline. Or who knows, maybe we all live to 120 now, the way things are going. But
Or not the
yeah.
way things are going. Yeah.
But yeah, developing emotional strength, I think, is something that we could literally just put on our intention board or goal board. And it's like, oh, that's actually very worthwhile. In fact, even the business leaders and people who are very influential and have a lot of leadership skill, it's because they have a lot of emotional resilience and a lot of emotional strength.
And how would you say what that actually is? Like when you think about a business leader who has that emotional resilience or emotional strength, how does that show up?
Yeah. So the one of the main themes of the book is dignity and humility,
Mm,
right?
yep,
And so this is a polarity. And to have dignity and humility at the same time in the face of conflict is what transforms and transmutes the energy of conflict.
that is so
That's
powerful.
yeah, that's the thesis of the book, and we go deep into how to do that. So emotional strength is really just like I'm able to really listen,
Uh-huh.
which includes like listening to a person's body language and tone of voice with my belly and my heart, not just the
Not just
words that
right,
they're
right,
saying,
right.
right? To really listen and really be receptive to others,
Yeah.
um, without losing any of my own dignity or my own truth, right?
Mm.
Another person's truth doesn't actually threaten my own
Yeah.
in
Right.
this paradigm if we
It's
can
kind
have
of
both.
so powerful to realize that, like, oh, I can stand strong in what I believe without overly rigidifying or trying to control,
Mhm.
which I guess is where the humility comes in. It's like I can believe what I believe, and I can also have the humility to know that I may not be right, or this other person's opinion or perspective may add something to mine.
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that we all try to control.
Mhm.
And in fact, the doorway to authentic relating practice is often admitting to ourselves the way,
100%.
like all of our unskillfulness with our own emotions, our unskillfulness in relationships. And that's really the starting point.
Yeah.
If we can do that without judging the heck out of ourselves, we can start to get in relationship with that, and then be with each other's in what we call a truly relational way instead of a controlling way.
Mm. And what do you see gets to happen when people actually relate in a relational way?
Hmm. Well, I think it opens up a lot more possibility for connection,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know, and a lot more possibility for what I would call synergy in relationship. So true collaboration and even productivity and innovation comes from synergy in
Energy.
relationship,
Yep.
right? And it can take us a while to get there, to really develop that kind of dynamic with someone else. And if you're not willing to be vulnerable with others or to be relationally open with others, if you just want to have the interaction be transactional at bit in work, for example,
Yeah.
it's never going to reach that realm of synergy
Of synergy.
because we're not including the full human being, right?
Yes. Right. And it seems like I'm just thinking about flow too, right? It's like, each individual can have their own flow or get into a powerful state. But if you're not being relational, if you're trying to control, then it breaks down, as to, like you're saying, like how much could be created together, how much collaboration could happen. Wondering if we could give an example or, talk about one of your practices so that they can get a sense of the practical nature of this.
Mm-hmm. Well, shared reality is a concept that's central to authentic relating.
Yeah.
And I have this little haiku in the book, this little poem, um, which I'll start with, and then I'll explain it.
Okay.
So my perspective and yours, two directions life will use, steering us towards truth.
Ooh,
So what this means is that I always only have part of the truth,
yes.
and
That's humbling for some people to actually recognize.
right. And everyone I'm in relationship with always has part of the truth as well.
Yeah.
They can see me in a way that I can't see myself.
Yeah.
Right. And the metaphor is like, have you ever looked in a mirror? Guess what? That's not what you look like. That's what you look like on a two-dimensional surface. And you're
Right.
actually a three-dimensional being.
Yeah.
And other people can see you in a way that you could
You'll never
never,
be able to see yourself.
you could never experience.
Mhm.
Um, and so this is a way of like you said, it's encountering reality in a way that's quite humbling.
Mhm.
Hmm. um, my favorite poet, David White, has this frame. He calls it the conversational nature of reality,
Mm.
there's no fixed sense of self that will survive a real conversation. So if we're
Wait, hold on. There's no fixed sense of self that will survive a real conversation.
yes,
That's profound. And
yes.
and so for those listening who don't have a sense of that fixed sense of self, would you describe it as like, who we identify as or who we're trying to prove we are, as opposed to who we are when we're not controlling? Or do you have another way of describing that?
Yeah, our identity changes a little bit every single day.
Mhm.
And if we're trying to pretend we're a static thing and stay the same all the time, we're actually going against the flow of the universe.
Totally. I was actually working with someone yesterday who was having these revelations and new conversations with his wife. And she was like, well, this isn't who you used to be, and this isn't who you were a month ago. And I was
Hmm.
like, right, wow, we really can get stuck and put people in a box of, well, if that's not how I expected you to respond, then that's not you. And how do we actually allow our partners to grow and change? And sometimes it does take, it's a side note, we don't have to go into that, but it's like it does take some rebuilding of trust if someone is having these rapid changes, or if suddenly someone reveals something in a relational way that they've been protecting for a really long time. It can be hard for people who've known each other to trust each other in that way.
Hmm. Yeah, when we start telling the truth, very often in a relationship, um, things can become more tense or more challenging
Yeah.
because change is difficult for all of us.
Yeah.
Actually, I think of the ego. We have this funny word in personal growth, the ego. I call it's the capacity to resist change. It's like psychological homeostasis.
Huh.
It-
That's what the ego goes for.
yes,
Yeah.
the ego is constantly trying to resist change. It's
For,
just what
for
it's.
comfort, right? Or for that sense of what's known. And so then I can actually somehow seemingly
Mhm.
relax or be who I think I am.
Yeah, it's just very natural. We're trying to protect whatever resources we have,
Yeah.
whether that's social influence over other people. And if someone else is talking about us and we're not in the room, that threatens our social influence with a
Right.
particular group. And our nervous system starts to freak out and think that we're under threat.
Right.
Right. And then we communicate in a less skillful way because of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, authentic relating is a lot of practical tools to really learn to slow down our nervous system and respond to those kinds of situations in a way that can transmute or digest the experience of fear or the experience of anxiety or the experience of
Right.
tension. And then there's when we're in conversation with someone and we get through that experience,
Mhm.
there's a palpable relieving feeling like,
Yes.
oh, we're back in connection.
Yes. And you and
We're,
I have sat in rooms, with dozens and hundreds of people doing these practices and seen that and how people do come alive and there's more freedom and power and love and it is
Mhm.
palpable. And I want to go back to you were saying about shared reality. Is there anything more you want to say about that?
Yeah. Well, it's just a set of practices. The book is a set of practices and tools and exercises that teach us to have this frame of mind with everyone in our lives
Yeah.
of like, how do I get to shared reality rather than how do I force my reality on others?
And shared reality, from my experience, is not that we necessarily agree,
Mm.
but that we both see the reality that each other is in. Is that how you see it as well?
Yeah, definitely. It's like building a foundation together.
Uh-huh.
Shared reality is kind of like, oh, what kind of house do you and I want to have, Shayna?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of relationship do you and I have? We have to build that brick by brick with agreement.
Well, we also have to know, like, hey, this brick is 8 inches by 12 inches versus, you think the brick's one size, I think a brick's another size. So it's not, I guess that would be something would have to be the same. But I think I'm just trying to make a point of like, we have to have a sense of if you see something as purple and I see it as red, we don't necessarily have to agree, but we have to know that you're seeing it as purple and I'm seeing it as red.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. This dialogue's fun. How's it going for you so far?
Good, it is fun. I notice I feel excited and I also have this a little bit of like a scratchy feeling of like, okay, I want some kind of example or a practice. Maybe, I don't know if there's a practice that we could actually do. That could be exciting.
Mm, yeah. Let me think about what that might be. Unless you have an idea, I want to know what your heart's longing is for the men listening today.
Mm. My heart's longing for the men listening. I would say my heart's longing is first that you listening know that nothing that you think or feel or want is wrong, right? That there's like a
Hmm.
foundation of I'm I don't know if good is the right word because then that gets into judgment of good and bad, but like let's just say for now, right? All is good and I can actually like you said, I can have this dignity
Mm-hmm.
and a kind of power and sovereignty,
Mm-hmm.
that the men listening can have a dignity, power, sovereignty, and from there have the humility to have really incredible connections, like
Mm-hmm.
to have the humility to be open enough or vulnerable enough that deep connection happens, that love actually flourishes, that
Mm,
sex is really passionate and exciting and connected, and business happens because there's passion and a desire to serve something bigger. And so I guess it is around
mm-hmm.
aliveness, aliveness, love for self, and also a sense of not being alone and
Mm,
not, in that aloneness, thinking there's something wrong about me or more wrong than someone else.
mm. So what I'm getting is that you would love for men to feel powerful and to be in their power. And then also from there to have the humility to have really rich, juicy relationships.
Yeah, no, so interesting. When you said power, at first I was like, that feels like a simplification. But when you added the humility, that what you said after?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to have incredible relationships and, just to have life feel meaningful
Mm-hmm.
and exciting rather than feeling like I'm living based on the expectations that someone else, gave to me, and I'm dying inside and feeling alone, even though I'm around people.
Mm. Yeah, so there's this theme around you don't want men to feel alone.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. And what's it like for you if I just ask a few really simple questions and kind of reflect you in this way?
That feels exciting.
What kind of exciting?
You mean what you just did?
Yep.
Oh, as you just did it? Okay, I thought you were going to ask more. So, okay, let me re-answer that question. Um, well, it's a little edgy. It does feel like you were talking about living on the edge because I'm like, whoa, what if I
Mm-hmm.
can't explain this? Or what if this doesn't make sense? Or what if people judge me? I've had some ads on Facebook for a guide I wrote about dating after divorce, and I've gotten some horrendous comments from men. I mean, like, so just about me and how disgusting I am, or why I would even think I could help men. And it's just been really heartbreaking in a way. So there's a little part of me that feels like the more I reveal
Mm-hmm.
and the more I'm visible, or the more I show up and try to do what I want to do in the world, the more people can bash me. And as I say that, I'm just thinking about a couple or business partners or whatever, right? Like the more we reveal
Yeah.
what we want and what we believe, it's true, the more we could be
Mm-hmm.
shot down.
Mm.
So I
Wow.
feel both. I feel the paradox of like, ooh, this is exciting to clarify, and it's vulnerable to speak it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah, I'm really glad you're bringing in this other side, and I definitely feel connected to you. It
Mm.
seems like we're exploring your mission and your purpose and why you do what you do.
Yeah,
And then there's this whole other side that there's a risk to what you're doing. There's a
yeah,
cost.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And just this little exploration with you over the last, 3 or 4 minutes, um, you and I know because we've been practitioners of authentic relating and taught it in one form or another for, a decade.
yeah,
Um, but just for the listeners, the more close to the present moment you are, the more aliveness is there,
yeah,
right? And um, what I was doing was just a combination of curiosity and reflection,
yes,
right? I was reflecting back to you the main ideas, which just signals you to go deeper,
yeah,
right? When we're talking with someone, there's 10 layers underneath the surface that
yeah.
are not being talked about. And when we do this very simple reflection, or maybe
Million. We
infinite
were
layers.
talking before. And you said, "How are you?" And I was like, "Well, there's a million layers to that."
Yeah. And when I reflect and I leave space for you to respond, all of a sudden these other layers can pop out.
Yeah,
And so for me as a man, this is when I learned this basic skill, you know, 9 years ago when I first encountered authentic relating,
yeah.
it was a huge game changer for my dating life.
How so? I can imagine, but I just want to hear you say it.
Yeah, it was like all of a sudden it was like I had a superpower that allowed um, us to discover like hidden treasures together
Yeah,
instead of trying to impress her or trying to you know, create an experience by going to a water park or taking her somewhere cool, trying to create these outer experiences that
yeah,
would create excitement, that would lead to attraction, that would lead to a deeper relationship or sex or whatever. I was creating inner experiences for us.
yeah.
And I think this is the realm a lot of women really want to be led into. Like,
I
it,
agree. I agree. I mean, for me, when a man asks me questions or brings me into a kind of emotional or conversational or relational experience that touches me deeply in a way that I haven't been all day or all week,
Hmm.
it's really exciting. And I hear a lot of men saying like, whoa, but isn't that going too deep too fast? Or I don't want to become the friend who's just, dealing with her emotions, or she's going to cry with me, but then she's not going to go to bed with me. And I love that you're shaking your head. So tell me, tell me what you're thinking.
Well, it's just really rich for me. And it's like something that I really want for men out there as well, to have this. And so if you notice the way I started, I said, what's your heart's longing?
Yeah.
And in the book, I talk about this as a tool that's called what's underneath,
Hmm.
right? So there's all these surface layers that we're at, which is probably the most efficient. It's probably the best for a lot of work situations.
Yeah.
It's definitely really useful for logistics and getting to the same place at the same time so we can have a meeting.
Yeah.
Um, but in 90% of our lives maybe lived at that surface level. That's kind of normal. And if you can lead uh, into deeper layers of connection, uh, emotional experiences, it's just, I experience it as inherently nourishing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just going to say, just to be clear, in a business meeting, you're not necessarily going to say, what's your heart's longing right now, right? There's different questions might be more relevant, or though I think, talking about someone's heart's longing or those deeper layers is often more relevant than we realize. But, we can also be
Mhm.
aware of who we're speaking to and what language they use. Like there are men who I know who are attempting to connect with their wives where, they might look at them and roll their eyes and be like, longing, I don't know. But you could use a different framing, which is like, what do you really want right now? Or what matters to you? Or even
Mhm.
acknowledging like we've not been connecting. We've been in this conflict for, the last month or the last week. And so I'm wondering, what would help you feel more connected to me?
Mhm. Yeah, and one question that I really use that's like really translated and works in many, many different environments.
Yeah.
What's important about that to you? What's
Yeah.
important to you?
Yeah.
Because the word important, it's like, it's very like, it gets people to reflect on their motivations,
Yeah.
on their values. It gets them to reflect on what's underneath. And it really works well in almost any situation.
I can see that. It's very versatile.
Hmm.
Well, this has been amazing. I feel happy to do this with you and happy to, you know, dive in a little bit to one of your practices. And I'm just curious, what do you want to make sure people hear before we complete? Is there anything that feels missing from this
Hmm.
conversation?
Hmm. Yeah, we all get to start exactly where we are.
Mm.
That's really the most important thing, is to, the book is really designed to provide emotional education. And just like some of us can, bench 200 pounds and other of us can bench 120 pounds, like we all get to start exactly where we are,
Yeah.
with developing emotional resilience, with developing emotional strength. And we need more emotional education
Mm,
in our
sure.
society.
For sure.
And so when we're unskillful in the realm of conflict, we really, really need to learn to let ourselves and others off the hook.
Yeah.
That is really the doorway to be able to transmute, especially if there's old energy or resentment or anything like that that's built up over time. It's like we're all doing the best we can. And simply putting it on the map of like, oh, I want to become better at communication. I want to become better at, um, you know, understanding my emotions and understanding the messages from them and being able to translate that into clear and vulnerable requests with people,
Mm.
um, because I want to have a rich life,
Right.
right?
Now, does letting people off the hook mean you have compassion and you get a sense that, like you were saying, like everybody's doing the best they can, but I don't imagine that means just giving up or walking away.
No, I primarily mean letting go of self-judgment and
Okay.
letting go of judgment of others.
Mm,
So judgment reduces learning
yes,
and
drastically.
drastically reduces learning, and um, acceptance increases learning,
Yeah.
right? And this is not something any of us, I don't know about you, but I've yet to meet someone who's received an emotional education when they were 15 years old.
No. Well, some of the kids these days are starting to get it, but not most
Yeah.
of us who are adults right now.
Yeah. I had a 15-year-old girl in my workshop in in Philadelphia with her father. It was like so amazing. I saw like a vision of the future
Yeah.
when we are receiving that. But we all get to start where we are, just simply means um, this is something we can all continue to grow at
Yeah.
for our whole lives. We get to start where we are,
Yeah.
and we get to mess up along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and when I think about couples who are frustrated with each other,
Hmm.
right? It goes better when you can acknowledge, oh, okay, so this is where you are in this moment to the other, right? This is your level of capacity around emotions or, anger, sadness, whatever. The acceptance of that doesn't mean, again, okay, we're not going to work at this. But when you bring the judgment and the shaming and the attacking, right, people don't
Mm-hmm.
have an incentive to open or to grow. They just want to protect themselves even more.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I'll give one more tool from the book because the book has 30 tools in it. So I
Right.
feel, very generous in like talking about a lot of them on this
Yeah.
podcast. It's called Acknowledge Your Impact. And so this is a practice of humility. So if you're not good at, details or remembering things, just simply saying like, oh, I need help with this. Like I'm not that great at this. And you are inconvenienced because I am not skillful at this thing.
Mhm.
Right. The other title is Admit Your Shit. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on the
You
podcast,
can
but
totally, yes.
acknowledge your input or acknowledge your impact, aka admit your shit. It's like it's a practice of humility, and it doesn't diminish you at all. In fact, it's like this oil or grease for our relationships, because then people can have acceptance of like, oh, Jason knows that he can be arrogant sometimes because he
Yeah.
just admitted it to me.
Right. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and then we can actually be closer. We can bring in humor. We can play with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing the practices. And I highly recommend. I cannot wait to read the whole book. I can't wait to get it, and I want everybody listening to, if you feel inspired to get it as well. So, where can they find it?
Yeah. So it's authenticrelating.co/book.
Great.
So the name of my company is Art International, Authentic Relating Training International, and it's authenticrelating.co.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here and for being a fellow journeyer for the past at least a decade. It might even be longer at this point. And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you and you bringing this work, more
Mm.
broadly into the world.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Shayna, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world.
Mm.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.